So today we are going to cover IOLTA accounting. So IOLTA is basically, as you can see, interest on lawyer's trust account. So it is nothing but an escrow account that is being used where we are keeping the money of our client that pay us to take care of their cases. So for example, it doesn't happen in India, but in US how it happens is, if we have a case, whether it's a sexual discrimination, whether it's a accidental case, whatever the case it is, we reach out to an attorney, and then what attorney will do is he will fight the case for you. Okay, so whatever the cost for that settlement, so let's say the whole settlement will be around $50,000. So what will happen is, if I did some mistake and I'm going to attorney, like, please settle this case for me so that I don't end up paying huge money to someone who is actually the victim of this case. So I went to the attorney, I paid him a certain amount, let's say $50,000, and I told him, please take care of this case for me. You will be the one representing me to the court. You will be the one paying all the fees that is required to do your job, as well as to also pay someone who is actually the victim of this case. So what the attorney will do is, he will go to the court, and then, because you are appointed as a legal representative of that particular person, he will do all the expenses, and he will also reach out to the people who were actually victim of this case, and will speak to each one of them and try to settle the amount. So the how attorney plays, right? Because you are asking for, let's say, $20,000 because you were the victim, and then they will try to negotiate. They will say that let's do out of court settlement, or if you continue to fight this case, then you will end up paying more money, because the case can go for like long time, and it might cost you on the legal front, as well as you might be possible that you lose money instead of getting one which is you are getting right now. So let's say he gets settles for $20,000, whosoever the victim is. So out of that $50,000, I'll pay that $20,000 to that victim. I'll also pay, let's say, $5,000 for all the fees, all the expenses that I did for that particular case. Now I'm left with $25,000 that is still in the bank account. The attorney, generally what they do is, they take a 33% of whatever the original settlement amount, which is that $50,000, and will try to take the 33% as their fees, but they won't get it unless the case gets settled. So very much clear. And that also brings the accounting. So I got the money of $50,000 at this point, but that is not the money that I should be recognized as an income, or it is not my money to keep, right? Once the case settles, then only I can take the 1/3 of that amount. So for example, we got 50,000. So that's money coming in my bank account. So all the attorneys who are doing these kind of cases, they are required to register and open an IOLTA bank account, which is basically an escrow account in the state where they are registered at. Okay. So they open this IOLTA bank account. The moment the money comes into this bank account, you will see a credit into the bank account. Now we know that our bank account got credited by this amount. So the and then we also, because that's the money coming in. So when we do the accounting in our QuickBooks, the moment you see the money coming into bank account, your asset gets increased because you got the money in, right? But the corresponding adjustment or the corresponding categorization that we will be doing for this bank deposit is, we need to create a liability. So whatever the money that we got is an asset sitting in my asset, but that is not my money. In case the case does not go through and we need to refund the whole amount back, then we need to actually give that money back to the person who we are representing. In this case, because our liability is also same as what we received the deposit from that particular whosoever we are fighting the case for. So what the entry will do is, the bank debit, and then we will create a trust liability account. So that will be credited. So this trust liability account is basically a dummy account that will be used to keep all the liabilities and asset in check. So the balance in my IOLTA bank account will always tie back to this number. If these two does not tie, that means that you made a mistake in any of your transaction that has happened. Okay. So let's again go through with the whole transaction, and we'll see how it will impact my balance sheet P&L. So we got $50,000 in bank. What we did is, the IOLTA gets debited, and then we got the trust liability account credited. You can name it as much as you want, some say trust liability, trust in funds, whatever the fund liability, whatever the account that you want to use. So this would be the first journal entry. We created an asset because we got the money in the bank account which is not ours, so we also need to create a liability for the same amount. So that's why we created the trust in liability account as well. So this is the first money that came in. Now let's say that he actually went and make a lot of expenses. So what the attorney will do is he will have two options: whether he uses this money to pay for the expenses that he has incurred, or he pays from his own business bank account. Let's say if he do use his business bank account or the IOLTA bank account. Okay, so first, before we go into this, there is a rule in that you cannot draw the money from the IOLTA account unless this is related and very specifically to the case that you are working on. And if you are making any expenses for that particular case, or you are doing a settlement for that particular case, or once the case settles, then you are transferring the money from the IOLTA account to your business bank account, because that is your fees that you want to keep, right? Except for these three scenarios, there will be not in a way that you will be actually drawing money out of this account at all. Okay, so now so attorney went to the court and he spent like $1,000 for fees for getting the files out of the courts, right? Generally to get, like, we get the FIR reports, whatever the amount that he is paying to generate that document. So he paid from the business bank account. The moment he pays the business bank account, because that's the money that we are going to receive back from the IOLTA bank account, so that is not our expenses. There are two ways to record this transaction. One would be is we record this as an expense, and whenever we get the money out of that IOLTA account, because as a reimbursement, then we will record that as an income. So we call this as a gross accounting. So that is still okay, but the right way to do this accounting correctly is to actually, whenever we make that payment, we will book a prepaid client cost. So we will debit the prepaid client cost account debit and to business bank account. So that will be credited. So I paid the money, so that the money going out. So that's why I'm crediting my bank. I'm reducing my asset, and I'm creating an asset because I paid for someone else's behalf, and that money will be coming back to me once I finish the case. So this will still stay in my balance sheet, in my asset, as long as the case goes on. So you will continue to make all these expenses, $1,000 for files, let's say $200 to go to a court for the transportation, all those expenses you will continue to park in this account. Okay, the moment case settles, in that case, so in this type of transaction or this option, because we booked an expense, we can create an income as and soon we transfer the money from IOLTA account to pay us back for the expenses that we do. So in that case, we will do bank account debit to income account, or a reimbursement of the expenses. But in this case, sorry, because everything is sitting in the prepaid client cost in the other current assets. So what I'll do is, when I get the money from the IOLTA, I'll do the bank debit because I got the money in my business bank account, and then I'll credit my prepaid client cost. So that prepaid client cost gets zero. We did not make any money. We are not charging any margin on any of the costs that we are incurring on that case. So whatever money we debited, it's going to get credited when we do this entry. So this account will net to zero. Okay. So that's how we will treat the first transaction, which is the expenses that we are doing on behalf of the SSC or person who we are representing to. Now the second nature of transaction that we are doing here is the settlement that we are paying to the victims. Okay. So as we discussed, let's say we paid $20,000. Initially that victim was asking actually $50,000 from us, or let's say 40,000, but we negotiated, the lawyer did the job, and they got all the documents, they prepared the case, and they tried to settle the amount at 20,000, and the victim also agreed to it. So now we need to pay that $20,000. Now we technically 99% of the time you will see that the company or the lawyer does not use their business bank account to pay for this settlement, because that is not the correct way to do it. So we should always use the IOLTA bank account to make the payment for this settlement that we are doing, because then it's easier to explain why we paid this. Otherwise, we need to explain why we use our business bank account, and then you will end up transferring the money from one bank account to another, which does not make sense. So always see that the client will use the IOLTA bank account to pay for the settlements. Now, when he pays for the settlements, so let's say he pays person X, so X account debit to IOLTA bank account. Now, because I'm paying to that person X, does that person X cares about is related to the our legal firm? No, it is related to the case, right? We are just paying on someone else's behalf, so we don't care who we are paying, right? We will not be debiting them. So that should not be account that we will be using when we debit or when we pay to someone for the settlement. Whosoever we are paying, this debit will actually go into the trust liability account that we created. So when you will be debiting the trust liability and crediting the IOLTA account. Now, why we are doing this? As I told, the first rule of doing the IOLTA accounting is your asset in the bank balance of the IOLTA should tie back to what it shows in the trust liability in your current liabilities. And how these two will match? Let's say I paid to someone like X account debit to IOLTA. So that's the entry that I did. So my IOLTA balance got reduced. But if you didn't use that trust liability account, then your trust liability account is still at 50,000 because that's the entry that we posted initially, right? Sorry. The first journal entry that we posted was IOLTA account debit to trust liability. But if we, let's say we do not use a trust liability account here, what will happen is the IOLTA account will now 50,000 minus 20,000. So it will be sitting at 30,000. So my asset will show 30,000, but my liability account will show 50,000. And then I have this additional account that will be coming in my balance sheet sitting at 20,000. Does not make sense, right? So instead of doing the debit to the person we are paying, we will be actually debiting the trust liability account. But make sure that we are actually making a note either in the description that this is related to case number this and we paid to this person as part of settlement. So it is easy for us to know who we paid this to and what case this relates to. Okay. So that is the second transaction we do. The final transaction that happens, which is a really interesting one, is, and that is the most important one, is basically, and that's where I see a lot of mistakes. So we paid $1,000 for the prepaid or the case filing charges. We paid 20,000 for settlement. Now we are left with 29,000 because we already spent 21,000 out of the case. Now we agreed with the client that this settlement price, whatever you have, the 1/3 of this will be my fees for representing you and fighting the case for you. So that would be what, like 16,666 something. So that 16,000 is my revenue, and then whatever is left out after I deduct this, 29,000 minus 16,666 would be how much? 12,333. So now I have a balance of 12,333. So I have a total balance of 29,000 right now sitting in my bank account. Now I need to do two transactions out of that. One would be 16,666. I need to pay myself, and then 12,333 I need to repay or refund it back to the case, to the person who we represented to. Now let's do this transfer. Now we have 29,000 in my bank account. So what I did is, this is sitting in my IOLTA bank account. How QuickBooks works is, QuickBooks IOLTA. So this is how the bank feed looks like, right? This is my business bank account. You will see 29,000 in the balance, and you will see a transaction transfer out. Sorry. So that was 16,666, and in the business bank account you will see a transfer in. So the moment how we react to this transaction, the moment we see these two transactions and we can see that this is actually going into the business bank account, this is coming from IOLTA, we kind of match it, and we think that our job is done now. No, when you match this transaction, what will happen is your IOLTA business bank account is now reduced by 16,666. So you have 12,333 sitting in the bank account. So asset will show 12,333, but your trust liability account will still show at 29,000. Because we did the transaction of 20,000, we also did the transaction of 1,000, but we did not do anything in relation to that 16,666 that we transferred. So what will happen? What we need to do to make sure that this ties back? So then we need to post a journal entry. what that journal entry will be, that we need to recognize the revenue, because in this case we never recognize any revenue whatsoever so far. So what we will do is we will debit the trust liability account debit by the same amount, and then we will recognize it as a revenue, 16666. So when I do this, my balance in the trust liability account will get to 12,333. My balance in the IOLTA account is also 12,333. So now I'm left in the asset same amount in my liability account. Okay. Now this amount represents the amount that we need to refund back. So the moment I refund this back, we will reverse the journal entry, or we will do the credits and debits opposite to what we did originally when we received the fund. When we got the $50,000, we did IOLTA account debit to trust liability account. Now we're refunding back to the our original client. We will be doing a trust liability account debit to bank account. The moment we do it, the bank account is now zero, the trust liability account is also zero. So that's how we do the journal entries for all the IOLTA related transaction. Now there is couple of additional things that we should also always try to do. Sometimes we are actually managing it in Excel, where we are keeping record of, because it will not be possible that you only have like one case in a month. There will be chances that you have 100 cases, then you are getting a lot of deposits. So how you are keeping track of what case you got the deposit for, what case you are paying the expenses for, and what cases you are actually need to transfer yourself for the fees that you generated. So in that case, it's okay if you are maintaining this in Excel. So what we do is in Excel, we download all the transactions from the bank for that particular month, and we look into each one of those transactions, and we write down notes next to it, whether this is related to matter A, B, X, Y, Z, whatever it is. And then we'll also write down what is the nature of that transaction, whether it is a settlement that we pay to the victim, whether it's a client prepaid cost, whether it's a legal fees that we transfer to ourselves. So that way we are keeping a track. And once we filter out the, let's say I apply a filter and select matter A, I can see the settlement, client prepaid cost, legal fees, the original amount, everything in one place. So that is one way to do this. The second way is to actually either use tax projects in QuickBooks when we create all those transactions. So in QuickBooks, what we will do is every time we have any transactions, we will tag it to this particular, matter. Okay, so let's say we have a transaction made for the settlement, we will tag it to this particular matter. Now the problem is we cannot actually specify whether that was for settlement or that was a refund, that was a client prepaid cost. So that's where we should actually add in the description itself that is a settlement payment to this particular person, all those things. So you can manage in the QuickBooks as well. But I think Excel does also a really good job. But then there are also a lot of software in the market that does this for us. And the most important one that a lot of legal firm uses is Clear. That's where they can maintain everything, every transaction and every record of what we are doing here. Okay.